Hey everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Bastock and Batchelor Bullshit Busters. I'm Simon Batchelor,
I'm Adam Bastock.
and this week we are going to be talking about the digital services tax. We're going to be
Right.
talking about what on earth is it, why has it suddenly appeared on my invoices, and more importantly, why on earth am I paying for it? So, Adam, do you want to give us a very quick overview of what this digital services tax actually is?
Yeah, so this is a charge that a lot of people got emailed through, I imagine, from Google saying there's going to be a 2% fee added to their invoices. And this is kind of a response from the past couple of years over, I'm not sure if it's EU wide, but I know a lot of EU countries have introduced a DST of some sort, essentially addressing the fact that, big tech companies were seen to be avoiding taxes. Which I think that, the spirit behind it, I think, is fairly correct and well, what's the word? Well-meaning, but very poorly conceived, essentially, in the fact that what Google, Facebook, and Amazon have all done is just pass that straight back on to the end consumer. With Amazon, that end consumer being small businesses, and obviously with Google Ads and Facebook also, anyone who's using that platform to advertise on are now paying that 2% kind of surcharge. I think for a lot of small businesses, it's probably not going to be a huge amount of difference to your kind of monthly invoice. You're not necessarily going to notice it. If you're spending, £2,000 a month, it's going to be about 40, 50 quid a month kind of additional. So it's not the end of the world. But as you were saying, Simon, before we kind of started, the annoying thing is this tax isn't going to hit HMRC's bank accounts particularly swiftly. It seems that because it's still going to Google, they're still going to use their infrastructure of creative accounting to properly move this money around in a very cost-efficient way, shall we say.
Yeah. Well, I
And
think that's where the problem stems from, isn't it? Is for
yeah,
years, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and many other multinational companies have used creative accounting structures to make sure the money is always on the move and it never sits around long enough to incur the taxes that other small businesses have to pay, mainly because
yeah,
they can't afford to run such creative accounting strategies. So because of this, the EU for a long time has wanted to put a stop to this. However, there are certain territories within the EU that actually part of their sort of whole, I suppose, their sort of country level income,
yeah.
their
Dividends or this
yeah, just
revenues.
the entire sort of plan for the country's infrastructure is actually basing the headquarters of companies there in order that they can move money through.
Yeah,
There are several big ones. London, Dublin, and Luxembourg are all
yeah,
the sort of capitals of this in the EU, with Frankfurt sort of closely behind. But all of those centres are essentially used by these big companies to move their money around so they don't have to pay tax, is the ultimate reason behind it. It's well publicised. Even the UK government have come out and said it. So we're not breaking any news to anybody there. Turns out these companies don't pay any tax. On a certain level, they get caught every year and then they just move it somewhere else and change it. So the EU got fed up with this, and the British government decided, with a certain amount of wisdom, I guess, to add this digital services tax on. The problem is they forgot to put the small print in that says, but you can't simply pass this on to the customer. So essentially what's happened is Google have said, right, okay, because the cost of doing business in the UK has now gone up by 2%, we're putting up your bills by 2%. But because they run such a large network of creative accounting, none of that money's ever going to make it back to HMRC because they're just going to move it offshore like they do with VAT and like they do with corporation tax. So because all that money's moving around all the time, it feels like all they're doing is passing this on to sort of smaller business. Because if you're a larger business of, say, some of the bigger brands in the world who use Facebook, you also have the similar structure whereby if you don't like doing business in the UK, you can just move your billing address to France or Luxembourg or Dublin because you have an office there. So you just go, oh yeah, our UK billing address is now Dublin. So that 2%'s gone. But
yeah,
for many small people spending 10, 15 to 100 to £1,000 a month on Facebook, they don't have an office in Dublin they can move it to get round this 2%. So it kind of feels like small businesses have to pick up a bill that's designed to stop multinationals avoiding paying tax, which they are doing. Otherwise, this bill wouldn't exist. So,
it does just seem a little kind of naive almost of HMRC with not putting in just a very simple disclaimer that says this fee cannot be passed on, and that would kind of solve it. I think.
yeah,
I'm not an accountant, obviously, but that
I mean, it
seems
would
like
solve
it's
it. Yeah.
it's just like a gaping hole in this legislation that isn't being addressed. And I'd like to think that in the next 6 months to a year, and it's not perhaps the biggest issue happening in the next 6 months to a year, but it would be addressed at some point that they kind of say, well, actually, this can't be passed on to the end user because it is only affecting small businesses. I think the DST only applies to companies that are turning over at more than 250 million a year. So it is targeting only the tech giants. If you are a small startup company running like digital advertising, I don't think it applies to you. It is purely aimed at companies that are doing a shitload of money.
Yes.
Which is kind of, again, it's good, but also it means that because of the way that Google or Facebook are going to work around it, it's only going to be passed on to the smaller companies because
Yeah.
any multinational corporation will have, by the nature of their infrastructure, multinational accountancy offices based in multinational tax havens, tax efficiency regions. Sorry. So I think there is like from a small business point of view, there's nothing really to worry about because I think you can do about it. It is there. It's 2% on your kind of operational cost now. Maybe you want to reduce spend slightly to kind of account for that, and that's perfectly fine to do so, I think. But yeah, it's just a bit of a shitter, really.
I think also it's just a bit of a kick in the teeth, especially from Google.
Yeah.
I mean, Google a few years ago changed their structure to be owned by a company called Alphabet. So Alphabet own Google. They also own YouTube. They own a whole host of other weird companies. Everything from like robotics. No, they sold that, but to like solar farms. They own a lot of different companies. Ever since then, because Google is now sort of a stocks and shares focused company as opposed to a founder focused, let's do some good company, Google Ads has been spun off, and the new person who came in to sort of run Google Ads essentially said, well, look, we no longer want to help businesses promote themselves. We want to make money out of businesses promoting themselves. And they restructured all of the programs. Like they got rid of all the Google Partner Program, which used to help small agencies help small businesses. So there's no longer an account management. And instead, Google took that in-house and formed AdWords Express, which is essentially a really good cash machine for Google because you can essentially just rinse small businesses for money. Like every day, those call centres are just relieving people of thousands of pounds because all they do is tell you to spend more money, spend more money, spend more money until you get so fed up with it you cancel it. But that's the aim. That's literally the aim of it. So the problem is because they've got that, they've kind of to someone who's been doing Google Ads since Google Ads came out, essentially, we've noticed the change and that sort of shift away from supporting small business to really actively working against them. So they see them as a cash machine, not something to help. Now, obviously, the Google website will say exactly the opposite of this, but the reality, i.e. the lived experience from a lot of small business owners, is exactly the opposite. So although Google Ads is still very effective, and we're not saying that it's not an effective tool, we're just saying that as a business sense, the way Google manages that account has changed significantly over the last few years. This just feels like another way that Google have decided to make it more expensive for small businesses to get involved in Google Ads. And to be honest, the only reason I can see it is maybe they've got some shares in Facebook. That would be a thing because they want more small businesses to go and spend money with Facebook. Because I've noticed actually the cost of Facebook ads for me, especially in the sector we're running them in, has actually gone down quite a bit. So
Yeah.
I think Facebook are taking the opportunity here to realise that, I mean, I know Facebook are adding it on as well, but I think Facebook's doesn't start till November. I don't know about Google's, but...
No, Google's November as well.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of other companies that aren't passing it on, because I remember reading that eBay aren't passing it on as a fee. So they're absorbing the cost, which seems quite morally correct in this as a marketing thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good
I'm not sure how
differentiator
it's
for them.
supposed to.
Well,
Yeah.
because eBay compete with Amazon for sellers. So eBay's fees are lower anyway, so they naturally attract people with smaller margins.
Yeah.
So that's why the stuff on eBay is often considered a little more low quality. I'm not saying it is, but that's just what
The
they
perception
attract
is, yeah.
the sellers that are working with lower margins. So you can join those dots yourself. Amazon's fees are prohibitively, I mean, they start at 17%, I think, in the lowest category and go up from there. And now they're adding another 2%. It's a big thing to pass on for a company that is sitting on billions of pounds of cash,
Yeah.
it's an odd move to essentially what I feel they've done. I guess my sort of feeling is that they've decided to use the 2% tax as a lobbying leverage for the EU. So Amazon have decided it gives their lobbyists some power to say, well, we've simply passed it on. So by hurting us, you're hurting small business.
Yeah.
And they are willing to tighten the thumb screws with a threat until November. And my guess is they're hoping to either get it cancelled before November, or they're going to wait and see whether they add something in that says you can't pass it on and it'll all disappear. But I think this sort of threat of this 2% is being used as quite a political move. And it just feels a bit, it doesn't feel on brand for Google, Facebook or Amazon to be adding cost to something that literally costs them nothing. Like that 2% would disappear. I mean, that's a rounding error on their global accounts. It's not a big amount of money.
It just seems like such a big, as you say, like it's such an easy way to make a lot of people quite annoyed at your platform and to kind of anger them. So it does feel slightly more political as a news story than it does a kind of marketing tip almost. But yeah, I think there's probably more we could say on it, but I think that wraps it up fairly nicely in that, yeah, the digital service tax is a 2% levy on basically any advertising you're doing on Google Ads or Facebook Ads and or Amazon. Nothing you can do about it, so either stop using it or pay up.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of it,
or
really.
look into setting yourself up some creative accounting stuff like that, like the big boys have. But
Yes.
that's going to cost you way more than the 2%. And ultimately, do you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution? That's what you've got to ask yourself, isn't it? So you're just going to have to lump it for now, I guess, until either they give in or the other thing to do is if you don't feel very happy about it, maybe email them and say, do you know what? I'm not happy about this. I don't see why I should be paying this. And if enough people do it, maybe their PR team will feed back and say, do you know what? This is turning into a bit of a PR disaster here. Maybe we should start doing something about it because we can absorb 2%. That's absolutely fine. Maybe we'll, lower the wine budget for the Christmas party slightly and we can afford it. But really, there's not going to be much else we can do. So,
And I think, CC and HMRC as well to make sure that they know that they should change the bloody legislation to be. You can't pass it on. Like,
no, exactly.
That's
That's
day
all
one
they
of the
need to
meeting, surely. But
Yeah,
yes, anyway,
exactly.
I think we could go on for that for ages.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed our mini rant on GST. So if you've got any thoughts, if you've got any strong opinions, either way, please send them to us. Either comment on the video or get in touch with us directly. You can find us on LinkedIn with the links below. And yeah, if you want to know any more about your Google ads or your Facebook ads and you've got a quick question about the billing, maybe you're spending way too much on it and you think, oh, what's going on here? You need some help with it, do get in touch. We'd like to sort of have a chat with you about that as well. Always open to questions about these kind of things. Maybe we could then do a podcast all about billing and how to help with that. So do let us know if you've got any other questions. Get in touch with the links below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.